My boyfriend cheated. I'll be his unforgettable first love. My best friend, Chloe, was nursing a broken heart, and her remedy, a night at a male escort club. I was there for moral support, mostly to stop her from doing anything too crazy. The door across the hall was ajar. I saw my boyfriend, Ethan, wrapped around a girl, lost in a passionate kiss. The girl looked up, and her features, they were eerily similar to my own, years ago. Later, people would laugh at Ethan. Sarah's having her second kid, and he's still not over her. The faster I replace men, the faster I outrun heartbreak. Chloe, my best friend, declared, draped between two escorts, her eyes red-rimmed from alcohol. She nudged me. Sarah, you and Ethan have been together for 10 years. Why hasn't he proposed yet? Is he seeing someone else? Ethan and I hadn't been spending much time together lately, and the spark had dimmed. But 10 years was a long time, and I trusted him. I shook my head. He's not like that. He's just busy with work. No time for wedding planning. As soon as I said that, another escort walked in. The half-open door across the hall offered a clear view of the scene inside. A man and a woman embraced, their passion palpable even from a distance. Ordinarily, I'd just think good for them. But the man's back, it looked exactly like my workaholic boyfriend's. I froze. One of the escorts noticed my reaction and chuckled. Got your eye on Mr. Stone, huh? I'd give up if I were you. He's a one-woman man. Besides, MS. Young, he keeps his distance from everyone. Ethan, so busy he sent his assistant, James, to the hospital when I had a car accident, was supposedly a regular at a club with another woman. I clung to a sliver of hope. It was probably just a coincidence, a similar build, the same last name. But I wasn't one to avoid confrontation. I pulled out my phone and called Ethan. The man in the other room's phone rang. He silenced it, typed a quick message, and returned to kissing the girl, his hand slipping under her shirt. The intensity made me blush. Then I saw the text on my phone, in a meeting. My blood ran cold. Had he been doing this every time he'd brushed me off with a work emergency? Chloe, understanding what was happening, exploded. That jerk. I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. I stopped her. Ethan was important to me. No matter what, I didn't want to humiliate him. My mind was a mess. I don't even remember how I got home. That evening, the extremely busy Ethan actually came home. It was a face I'd known since childhood, but tonight, it felt like a stranger's. Ethan, can we talk? I asked, sitting on the sofa. Sorry, I have to work late tonight. He walked over, leaning in for a kiss. But as he got closer, the scent of another woman's perfume hit me, making my stomach churn. I turned my head away. How did you cut your lip? He froze, a flicker of panic in his eyes. I bumped into something. We'd met at an orphanage as kids and had come a long way together. Everything he had now, we'd built together. I didn't want to throw our life away, it would negate all those years of hardship. Ethan, remember our promise. We'd never lie to each other. No one was perfect. We'd known each other for almost 30 years, been together for 10. I was willing to give him a chance. He sighed, pulling me close. Of course. Sarah, I've just been busy with work. Don't overthink it. We'll get married after the company goes public. I'd been waiting to hear those words for years. Now that he'd finally said them, all I felt was sadness. He still wasn't being honest. Seeing my reaction, his face softened. He hesitated, then said gently, don't be upset. I won't work tonight. I'll stay with you. Okay. I'll ask Maria to make dinner. I forced a smile. Okay. I planned to confront him during dinner. If he didn't love me anymore, fine. Just tell me the truth. All I wanted was my fair share. But as dinner was served, his phone rang. His expression changed. Sorry, Sarah, something came up at work. I have to go. He grabbed his jacket and hurried out. I stared at the food, my appetite gone. Ethan, was he really taking me for a fool? I was trying to give him a chance to break up with me gracefully, and he wouldn't even give me that. I'd heard a girl's tearful voice on the other end of the call. As soon as he left, I went to his study and opened his laptop. He was usually careful, but his chat history with a Tina Young had been meticulously deleted. So, it wasn't Tina lately. Ethan couldn't stop talking about a new intern named Tina, a name he always mentioned with a smile. When I'd asked, he said Tina was a male college graduate. I sent a friend request to Tina Young. I'm from the club. Please accept. 30 minutes later, she accepted. Her first post was from half an hour ago, bad cramps, but my boss came to keep me company blushing. He's warming my tummy with his hands. Best boyfriend ever. The picture showed a man's hand on a woman's stomach, the intimacy undeniable. Ethan had a scar on his index finger from a fight he'd had defending me. I couldn't mistake it. I scrolled down, a masochistic urge driving me. Couldn't decide which lipstick to get, so my boss bought them all. Who has the best boyfriend? Me. He. Didn't want takeout, so my boss cooked for me. So sweet. Each post had comments from mutual friends. Wow, he treats you so well. When's the wedding? Mr. Stone is usually so serious, but he's so attentive to you. You can tell he's smitten. You guys are so cute. Makes me want a boyfriend. I thought he was being so secretive, but I was the only one in the dark. I used to be the one he doted on. Now he was showering another woman with the same affection. I kept scrolling, the nausea rising. Then I saw a post that broke me, feeling down, so my boss gave me the day off and took me to the amusement park. Don't be too jealous. The picture showed Ethan, smiling, with his arm around a girl who looked eerily similar to a younger me. It was from last year, National Day. The day I'd had a car accident and frantically called Ethan. He'd said, "I'm in a meeting, I can't leave. James will be there soon." I believed him. But he was at an amusement park with his lover. In the end, it was a client, Alex, who happened to be passing by, who helped me after the accident. Tears welled up and spilled down my cheeks. I wiped my eyes and sent Ethan a text. "Ethan, we're over." The message, as always, went unanswered. I pulled myself together and threw all my belongings outside the apartment, leaving only my laptop and a few clothes. As I was leaving, Ethan must have finally seen my text. His calls came flooding in. Even without seeing him, I could sense his panic. I didn't answer Ethan's calls, just declined them one after another, just like he'd done to me countless times. But the tears, they wouldn't stop. When I was 4, my father discovered my mother's affair and that my older brother wasn't his. In a fit of rage, he killed them both, leaving me alone. My grandparents were gone, and no distant relatives wanted the daughter of a murderer, so I ended up in an orphanage. That day, clutching the doll my mother had given me, I cried and cried. I had no family. Ethan came over and offered me a piece of candy. He wiped my tears and snot with a tissue and said softly, "From now on, I'm your family." He kept his word. Even in the orphanage, there was a hierarchy. The kids somehow learned about my past and taunted me relentlessly, calling me a bastard, a murderer's daughter. Ethan fought anyone who bullied me. The teachers scolded him, punished him. In the dead of winter, he stood outside, shivering, his face red from the cold. I'd try to wrap my scarf around him, my heart aching. "Ethan, please don't fight because of me. I don't hear them when they call me names." He'd frown. "No." I said, "I'm your family now. No one can bully you." And he meant it. When I was 10, a creepy prospective adopter cornered me, trying to touch me. Ethan saw and flew into a rage. He was only 13, small for his age, no match for the man. He was beaten badly, covered in blood, his eyes swollen shut. But he clung to the man's leg, screaming at me to run. The scar on his finger was from that day. As I grew older, I had plenty of suitors. But I couldn't forget the boy who lay bleeding in the snow, protecting me. Somewhere along the way, my gaze started following him. His smile made me happy. Other girls around him made me jealous. His words, even his glances, could send my heart racing. He became my whole world. When I was 18, Ethan, holding a bouquet of red roses, confessed his feelings, his face flushed. "Sarah, I love you. Please, give me a chance to love you, protect you, as more than just your brother. When you're old enough, we'll get married, have kids, build a family. Me and our kids will be your family." I was an orphan. But wherever Ethan was, that was my home. I remembered his promise. From the age of 20, I waited for his proposal. But 1 year passed. Then too, Ethan never proposed. He was always busy with work. We started a company together. Ethan complained I was too naive, too emotional, too childish for the business world, too clingy, too distracting. So I learned to be tough, to hide my vulnerabilities, to be independent. The company thrived and my influence grew, surpassing his. He became resentful, accusing me of being too dominant, of always challenging his decisions. I wanted to marry him, to have a family, not endless arguments about work. So I left the company. I thought if I changed, became the woman he wanted, he would marry me. But in the end, he just fell for someone else, a carefree, innocent girl. As they kissed, did he remember that I used to be that girl too? I moved out that night, staying with Chloe. I didn't have to worry about Ethan's sensitive stomach anymore, or wake up at every sound, wondering if he was home. Chloe and I ordered spicy crawfish, fried chicken, and kebabs, enjoying a late-night feast before falling asleep. I hadn't felt this free since I was 20. The next morning, Chloe went with me to the clinic. I'd found out I was pregnant 2 weeks earlier. But Ethan was always too busy, so I hadn't even had a chance to tell him. As we left the clinic, Chloe said, "Ethan's been blowing up my phone. He's blocked by you." I told him you were having an abortion. As if on cue, Ethan arrived. He stared at me, his voice trembling. The baby? Gone. His eyes reddened. 10 years, Sarah. What did I do wrong? You couldn't even answer my calls before doing this. I laughed bitterly. Should I have kept it? So Tina could be its stepmom. He flinched. Sarah, she's just an intern. What kind of intern makes out with her boss in a private room at a club? My voice was soft but firm. Ethan, I saw you both yesterday. The color drained from his face. He mumbled apologies. She looks so much like you. I couldn't help but notice her. You've changed, Sarah. You're so strong now. You don't need me like you used to. But he was the one who wanted me to be independent. I didn't want to argue. If you feel that bad, give me a bigger share of the money. I might not be able to keep the men I'd shaped, but I wouldn't lose the profits. I deserved that much. I knew he felt guilty. Now was the time to get what I wanted. Once he was fully invested in Tina, I might end up with nothing. His voice was hoarse. Are you sure? Yes. His lips moved, but seeing my expression, he just nodded. Unblock me. We need to discuss the details. Fine. As I agreed, I heard clapping and cheering behind me. Bravo, recognized the voice and rolled my eyes. Turning, I saw Alex standing there. He was the CEO of a gaming company, handsome and successful, but also kind of a goofball. He'd inherited his wealth and had stumbled into success. He reminded me of a golden retriever. Ethan's face darkened at the sound of Alex's voice, but Alex, oblivious, grinned. Thanks, man. Wouldn't have had a chance otherwise. He barged past Ethan and beamed at me. Sarah, I've asked you to join my company so many times. You always said your boyfriend didn't like you working. Now that you're single, would you consider being my CEO? Ethan had never wanted me to work, whether for our company or anyone else's. At our company, I was too dominant. At another company, I'd be too busy, and we wouldn't see each other. So, I'd always refused other offers. Now, I didn't have to consider his feelings anymore. I'll think about it. Awesome. Alex's eyes lit up. Despite being a 6'1" CEO, he fussed over me like a personal assistant. He insisted on driving me home, leaving Ethan standing there. On the drive, he pitched his company and showered me with compliments. Sarah, you're beautiful and brilliant. Don't take that cheater back. You can have anyone. I can introduce you to some amazing guys. But honestly, if you'd even consider me, my family would be eternally grateful. Chloe, easily amused, giggled like a hyena throughout the ride. When I got home, I saw a text from Ethan. Who was that? I replied, none of your business. When we were happy, Ethan was possessive, wanting to know every man in my life. But now, I realized he'd been filling our conversations with details about Tina. Tina liked sweets. Tina loved horror movies. Tina played with her pinky finger when she was nervous. He hadn't asked about me in ages. I needed to rest after the procedure. Chloe, worried about me, took time off work to keep me company. It was ironic. Ethan was always too busy to see me when we were together. Now, he was showing up 3 times a day. He brought me supplements, hired a housekeeper, bought me roasted chestnuts from my favorite place across town, even planned a trip to Turkey, saying he'd take me as soon as I recovered. He was making up for lost time, for all the trips we never took. He was back to being the man who'd do anything for me. But I knew we couldn't go back. See, when he showed up again with roses, I sighed. Ethan, you're busy. You don't need to keep coming. I'm fine. As long as he paid what he owed me, I didn't need anything else. It's fine. Your health is important. Work can wait. But I don't want to see you. It upsets me. It's not good for my recovery. He froze, looking fragile. He stared at me, as if he couldn't believe I'd say such a thing. I repeated myself. Seeing you reminds me of your lies, your cheating, it makes me sick. He forced a smile. After all these years, Sarah, can't you give me another chance? When I was in that car accident, you couldn't come because you were with Tina at an amusement park. Did you think about our years together then? I knew he wanted me back. He loved me, but he also resented me, resented our shared past, resented the fact that I was more successful than him. So he'd sought solace in a younger, more malleable version of me. But knowing him so well made his betrayal that much more painful. Ethan, you can't have everything. It's greedy. Let's end this amicably. Leave me with some good memories. Don't make me regret ever loving you. He seemed genuinely hurt. He left and didn't return, sending the money through his lawyer. I owned off the company. He'd initially wanted me to keep the shares, as they'd be worth more after the IPO. But I refused. He wasn't a good leader, too focused on his ego. He'd made me resign because of his pride. I didn't want my future tied to his. He quickly liquidated my shares and sent me the money. Along with the transfer, he sent a text: "Even if we're not together, I'll always be your brother. You can always count on me. And Sarah, Alex isn't good enough for you. Don't settle for him just to spite me." He hadn't even come to see me after my accident. I certainly wouldn't count on him now. And after cheating on me with Tina, did he really think I was still pining for him? I laughed and deleted his contact. Then I started talking to other recruiters. Seeing me entertain other offers, Alex went into overdrive, badmouthing every company that contacted me. The CEO of New Tech is a creep. He harasses all the female employees. "You're too beautiful to work there." And Stellar Inc. is terrible. The CEO is so cheap. He forces older employees to resign to avoid paying severance. He had an opinion on everyone. Alex, being a spoiled rich kid, knew nothing about running a business. He was just the chairman in name. But during my recovery, he was constantly at my side, extolling the virtues of his company. He cleaned, cooked, baked. His cooking, surprisingly, was excellent. He also became my designated playmate. Games, cards, mahjong, he was always up for it, subtly letting me win, making Chloe and me laugh. And he could talk about anything: gossip, fashion, makeup, travel. If Chloe and I expressed interest in anything, he'd get it for us within a day. He won me over. The day I agreed, he had his lawyers draw up a contract, making me sign it at 11 p.m., just in case I changed my mind. "Alex, you're putting more effort into recruiting me than most guys put into dating," I remarked. He grinned. "That's because Ethan didn't appreciate you. He didn't deserve you. A woman like you deserves the moon and the stars." He wasn't just competing with other companies, he was competing with the idea of me getting back with Ethan. He spent the entire month badmouthing Ethan, much to my amusement. I glanced at the time. "It's late. He should go." "There's a sofa," he said. "I can crash here. I'll drive you to work tomorrow." Any other man and I'd be suspicious. But he was so focused on getting me to work for him, and he was always respectful. I trusted him. "There's a guest room, too. You don't have to sleep on the sofa." The next morning, as we left my apartment, we ran into Ethan. He saw us together and his expression changed. "Sarah, you let him stay the night." Before I could respond, Alex jumped in. "Ethan, what's it to you? Sarah's not like you and Tina. And besides, you're her ex. Mind your own business." I ignored the sadness in Ethan's eyes. "Ethan, we broke up. Please don't come here anymore. I wouldn't want Tina to get the wrong idea." I walked to the car without looking back. He'd chosen lies and betrayal. There was no going back. Alex sped off and Ethan quickly disappeared from view. He was driving so fast, we got pulled over by a traffic cop. I'd never been publicly scolded like that before. I couldn't even look up. The lingering sadness I'd felt vanished completely. Alex, feeling guilty, transferred to my account as emotional distress compensation. I couldn't even be mad at him. I was busy for months after starting my new job. So busy that I barely registered the news of Ethan's new girlfriend, his company's IPO troubles, the scandal. I had no time for gossip, no time for sadness. I'd worried that my assertive nature would clash with Alex's, just like it had with Ethan. But Alex just kept cooking for me, buying me clothes, shielding me from unwanted attention, arranging my travel accommodations. He was my unofficial life assistant, and he loved it. People told him, "Sarah's manipulative. Be careful. She was kicked out of Ethan's company for her schemes. She's running the show now, Alex. Watch out, or you'll be reporting to her." Ethan had listened to similar whispers, and it had poisoned our relationship. I was worried about how Alex would react, planning to talk to him about it. But before I could, news spread that Alex had fired a senior executive and cut ties with 2 friends who'd criticized me. He complained to me, indignant. "They're just jealous. I finally found a competent CEO so I can relax, and they tried to sabotage me." He concluded, "They just want you for themselves. They want me to fire you so they can poach you." Terrified of me leaving, despite my reassurances, he couldn't sleep for a week. He was usually so cheerful, it was strange to see him worried. I offered a solution. I liquidated my shares in Ethan's company. "I could invest that money in yours. Then I'd be a shareholder, and you wouldn't have to worry about me leaving." I don't know if it was dumb luck or what, but despite his lack of business acumen, Alex had an incredibly talented team. Apparently, he'd headhunted several key executives from competing companies. Alex loved the idea and had his legal team draw up the contracts immediately, making me sign them on the spot. But it was a win-win situation. Why would I back out? Months later, during the Lunar New Year holiday, I finally heard the details of Ethan's downfall from Chloe. He'd had a falling out with a senior executive who, in retaliation, exposed his affair with Tina and reported the company for tax fraud. Two scandals right before the IPO had tanked everything. Ethan and Tina had broken up messily. She was telling everyone he'd used her as a rebound for his one true love. Chloe sighed. Ethan's life's been a mess since you left. I just smiled. The man who once controlled my emotions with a single glance now barely registered on my radar. Ethan had called a few times just to ask about my health. I suspected he wanted my help with the scandals but was too embarrassed to ask. A few days before New Year's Eve, the orphanage director invited me back for a visit. Alex insisted on coming along and I, used to his presence, agreed. I suspected he had feelings for me but I wasn't bothered. He was genuine, attentive and made me feel good. The orphanage was much nicer than I remembered. The kids were excited for the New Year celebrations. Because Ethan and I had been regular donors, the director organized a thank you dinner for us. It was the first time I'd seen Ethan in 6 months. He looked handsome in his suit but thinner. The director seated us together, asking, with a twinkle in her eye, "When are you two getting married?" Ethan's eyes lit up, a smile playing on his lips. But I spoke first. "Mrs. Zhang, we broke up 6 months ago. We weren't right for each other." Ethan's face fell. He'd cheated on me. Who was he putting on this show for? Alex, on the other hand, was practically radiating joy. "Sarah, switch seats with this little lady here. Don't want you to be uncomfortable next to your ex." Ethan looked like he wanted to say something, but I ignored him and switched seats. Later, I excused myself to use the restroom. Ethan was waiting for me outside. He looked at me with the same intensity he'd had at the beginning of our relationship. "Sarah, I didn't realize how much I needed you until you were gone. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about you as a kid, holding my hand about when we were starting the company, how you used to make me soup because you worried about my health." I stopped him. "It's over, Ethan." His voice rose. "We can start over. You're giving Alex a chance. Why can't you give me one?" I met his gaze. "Because there's no trust left. I don't want to live with that kind of doubt. If I stayed with him, every late night at work would be a suspected affair. Every unanswered call would be a source of anxiety. Jealousy would consume me. He wasn't worth it. Ethan, let's keep this civil. Just move on." Alex was standing nearby, watching, but he didn't interrupt. He just smiled and waved. I smiled back and walked towards him, taking his hand. He blushed crimson, practically tripping over his own feet. I laughed. "Alex, you're 28 years old. Why are you so shy?" He mumbled, "It's my first time liking someone. Not like some people who drag a relationship on for 10 years. He fumbled in his pocket and produced a diamond ring, slipping it onto my middle finger. Clearly, he'd planned this. "The proposal can wait, but you touched my hand. You have to take responsibility." I'm not as casual as Ethan. I stared at the ring. "This is huge. You've practically bought my entire future." He stopped sulking and grinned, picking me up and spinning me around. The kids, not knowing what was happening, cheered and clapped. Ethan stood alone at the edge of the crowd. I don't know when he left. A year later, Alex and I were married. I was pregnant. His family was wealthy, and I'd worried about their reaction to my background. But his mother was overjoyed. "We only have this one goofy son. All we wanted was a smart, capable daughter-in-law to take over the family business. This idiot got lucky. She was so sweet, it was almost embarrassing." I finally understood where Alex got his charm. His father, a man of few words, handed me a black card as a thank you for marrying his son. At the wedding, Ethan gave us an extravagant gift and got incredibly drunk. Alex had someone drive him home. Ethan didn't contact me after that, but his string of girlfriends continued, each one different, yet each bearing an uncanny resemblance to me. I found it creepy and worried about how Alex felt, but he just hugged me and our 2 children, smiling. "It just means you're amazing. Why would I be upset? I'm the lucky one who gets to keep you." I laughed. Being with him taught me that love shouldn't hurt. If it did, it wasn't worth it. I was Ethan Blake's prized possession, his pampered pet. But his heart belonged to Olivia Carter, his deceased older brother's fiancée. I was merely a cheap substitute, a stand-in. So when his brother died and Olivia came to him in the middle of the night, I left, carrying his child. Later, my daughter, Lily, accidentally brushed against Olivia's dress and was pushed down the stairs, dying from the fall. Ethan's response was dismissive. "Just a bastard. You don't expect Olivia to pay for that with her life, do you?" Read, the head trauma was too severe. There was nothing we could do. I stumbled back, shaking my head at the doctor's apologetic gaze. I clutched his hand, falling to my knees. No, please, please, save my daughter. I begged, my voice cracking. Sarah, have you caused enough of a scene? The familiar voice froze me. I turned to see Ethan, Olivia standing behind him. I lunged at Olivia, but Ethan, as he'd done so many times before, caught me, shielding her. Ethan, she killed Lily. I screamed, my voice thick with hatred. Olivia stepped forward, her voice soft. Sarah, I know you don't like me, but it was an accident. Your daughter kept pulling at my dress. I was just trying to pull it back, and I didn't realize I had her. She just fell. She held up her dress, showing me a barely noticeable smudge. Liar. I shoved Ethan away. Lily wouldn't just grab your dress. Olivia, take it out on me, not her. She was just a child. Why? Ethan's grip tightened on my arm, his eyes cold. Sarah, enough. Just a bastard. You want Olivia to pay with her life. That familiar look, that familiar coldness, transported me back to those years of humiliation and pain. I struggled to breathe. Bastard. Ethan, I carried her for 9 months. How can you call her that? Is Olivia months? How can you, the only person whose life matters to you? Impatience flickered across his face. Can't you be the bigger person? This isn't going to end well for you. He threw me to the ground and walked away with Olivia without a backward glance. It was a repeat of 5 years ago. My mother was sick, and I became Ethan's kept woman to pay her medical bills. Everyone said he adored me, spoiled me. The Blake family even warned him against marrying me. But I knew the truth. He loved Olivia, his brother's fiancée. I was just a stand-in, a woman with eyes that were vaguely similar to hers. A convenient substitute who wouldn't arouse suspicion, who could satisfy his forbidden desires. During intimate moments, he'd hold my face, preventing me from looking at him, from seeing the lack of love in his eyes. I'd hoped he might soften towards me, but he always chose Olivia. Even after his brother's death, when Olivia came to him in the middle of the night, he left me, bleeding, without a second thought. Thankfully, my baby was strong. She survived. And that was the day I left, taking everything I owned and never looking back. Lily's body was wheeled out. I stared at the wound on her head and sobbed. She was scheduled for surgery the next day to correct a congenital condition. She wouldn't have to envy other children running and playing. She would finally be free, but now Olivia had taken that from her. And her father, her own father, was protecting her killer. I knew Olivia wanted Ethan, and I knew I couldn't compete. But I never imagined she'd take my last remaining family member in such a cruel way. I wiped my tears, pulling myself up. Lily, Mommy will get justice for you. I demanded the security footage from the hospital. But the staff refused. Ms. Reed, we understand your grief, but we cannot release the footage. The implication was clear. The Blake family had intervened. I tried to find witnesses, but everyone avoided me. One even said, Reed, you can't expect us to lose our jobs just because your daughter died. I looked at their faces, their fear, their resentment, and knew I couldn't force them. The Blake family's power was absolute. Without evidence, the police wouldn't help me. I returned to Lily's body, only to find Ethan standing there. He turned to me, his voice hard. Sarah, if you try to hurt Olivia because of that bastard, you'll regret it. I slapped him. Ethan, are you even human? She was my daughter. He turned his head, his cheek reddening. My body trembled, my heart breaking. He slammed me against the wall. Sarah, you've gotten bold. You dare hit me. I could make it so you never see that bastard's body again. Ethan, you're insane. He stared at me, then smiled. Yes, I am. And I can be much worse. You left me, Sarah. There are consequences. You should be begging for my mercy. It was a familiar threat. Even with the money I'd earned, my mother's illness progressed. After she died, I'd tried to leave Ethan. He'd confiscated my ID, my passport, put a tracker on my phone, had me followed everywhere. I'd threatened suicide, and he'd finally relented. But then, no hotel, no landlord would rent to me. I ended up sleeping in a park, where I was almost assaulted. Ethan had rescued me. Even knowing he'd orchestrated the whole thing, I was trapped. I had no choice but to return to him. I'd only escaped because Olivia, eager to secure Ethan, had deliberately drawn his security away, giving me a window to flee. I hadn't realized that even with Olivia, he still wouldn't let me go. I arranged Lily's funeral, decorating it with her favorite things, buying her the little cupcake she'd seen at a bakery, and begged for. I'd promised to get it for her after her surgery. That short trip to the bakery had cost her life. When I returned, I found people dismantling the funeral decorations, destroying everything. I rushed forward. Stop. What are you doing? They ignored me, continuing to tear everything down. Don't stop, Olivia's voice called from the doorway. She smirked at me. My dress was ruined. I figured a funeral was in order. So, you'll have to move. I couldn't believe she was doing this, destroying my daughter's funeral over a dress. A funeral home employee approached me, his face apologetic. Ms. Reed, we're sorry, but Ms. Carter has booked the venue. You'll have to reschedule. Here's compensation. He offered me a stack of cash. I looked at Ethan. Ethan, you're doing this because of Olivia. You're even desecrating Lily's funeral. He frowned, his voice dripping with disdain. That dress was the first dress Olivia ever made. If that bastard hadn't ruined it. Olivia sauntered over, her arm linked with Ethan's, her eyes full of malice. He's right. That little bastard's life wasn't even worth a dress. Hearing them call Lily a bastard again, I snapped. I slapped Olivia across the face. Lily is not a bastard. I turned to Ethan, my voice shaking. Ethan, that bastard is your daughter.